What does being able to body players like Van Dijk, sprint past defenders like MBAPPE, and being able to effortlessly cut through every single defender on the other team like Messi all have in common? All of them have an athletic core. You can see it in these clips. Van Dijk shows that he has a strong and rigid core that nobody can seem to run through. Messi has this fluid and mobile movement that allows for him to effortlessly glide past the entire Real Madrid defense. And Mbappe has these powerful and fast rotations at the hips and ribcage that allows for him to produce crazy fast speeds. And all of these abilities can be trained through athletic core training. And no, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know what these athletes have done during their cumulative decades-long careers. In fact, none of us should. But what we do know for a fact is that when you train your core properly, you can get results like this, and like this. So I'm gonna break this video down into 3 parts where we work on getting the strength of Van Dijk, the fluidity and mobility of Messi, and the speed of Mbappe all through core training. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you an entire sample routine that is going to have sets, reps, and exercise videos so that you can use all the things I talk about in this video and utilize them to become a better footballer today. So if you find this video helpful and you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and support the channel so that I know. As always, super quick intro. If you're new here and you want to know who is talking to you, my name is Matt Stigler. I'm a pro football performance coach and I have been for about 10 years now, but let's get into the video. William Saliba was once quoted saying this about Van Dijk. Van Dijk has an aura. He's the boss. He commands everything. You can feel he's scaring strikers away. So if you want to be that player that everybody fears, that player that everyone keeps half of an eye on during the match because they don't want to go in for a 50-50 ball or a header against them, then this type of core training is for you. This type of core training is called core stiffness training. Now, some of you may have heard of this already, but I do promise you that there is a right and wrong way to go about this, and this is easily one of the most common mistakes that footballers make when it comes to their football training. So to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes, make sure that your core stiffness training checks these 3 boxes. Number 1, you're going to do something bilateral. And what bilateral means is both feet are right next to each other. So we're right next to each other like we would do a regular squat, not front to back like we're doing a split squat. Number 2, you do something slow and heavy. And number 3, you do something reactive. Now 1 and 2 can often be paired together, but if you want to be the strongest footballer out on the pitch, I would suggest separating them. Because at the end of the day, the bilateral stance exercise is really important because that bilateral stance is what's going to allow for us to move the max amount of weight. And when we move really heavy amounts of weight, we literally cannot do this without stabilizing and using our deep core muscles like the transverse abdominis. Otherwise, that bar or whatever weight you're using would absolutely crush you. But at the same time, during plays like this, where Haaland takes out other defenders, you need to be able to create that stiffness and rigidity in stances that aren't perfectly bilateral. So do something bilateral, do something heavy and slow, but make that heavy and slow thing something that is not bilateral. Which is why the heavy Turkish getup is one of my favorite exercises for footballers, because it is an ab exercise that puts you in every single different position that the abs can be in, from flexion to extension to lateral flexion to rotation, and combinations of these. Now, number 3, reactive exercises, is going to be the most overlooked aspect of this. And the reason that reactive training is so important for footballers is because it teaches our body to go from little to no stiffness to the absolute maximum amount of stiffness in as little time as possible. Because that is what happens to you on the football pitch when you are jogging, when you are running somewhere, and then someone quickly hits you from the side. You need to be able to react to that as soon as possible, because if you take too long to react to it, then you're going to end up fully face planted on the ground. And so often our regular heavy lifting that we do with like a back squat or a deadlift, it's really heavy, but we are taking as long as we possibly can to put that max amount of force into the barbell. That's not to say that heavy deadlifts and heavy squats are not beneficial. Obviously they are, but in this instance, we need to be able to do both. And one of my favorite ways to do this is with pin squat variations. And I already know what you're saying, Matt, how is a pin squat or any type of squat training core training? And the reason for that is because the way that we load these squats is going to have a major impact on how much of our core we are loading and what parts. And of course, doing isolated ab work is incredibly important, and that is something that we are going to get to later in this video. But doing heavy reactive strength training for this particular type of strength on the pitch is one of the most important things that you need to start doing today. So really quickly, how you do this type of training, whether you're doing a squat or you're doing a deadlift or you're doing a bench press, whatever it is, you are just going to let that barbell fully rest on the pins. You can lightly be touching it, but you are definitely not holding on to it. Then you want to, as quickly as you can, put your body into the barbell, react to it, and then press it up. So the entire goal is to go from little tension to max tension as fast as possible. So if you want to be that player that is so shifty and fluid that every single coach that watches you play wants you on their team, and your opponents feel like it isn't even fair to play against you, then this type of core training is for you.
Who's the best player in the world?
Lionel Messi.
Who's the best player of all time?
Lionel Messi.
This type of core training is core fluidity training. And this is where so many footballers go wrong, because they go out there, they do their bench, their squat, their deadlift, all these exercises that create a ton of stiffness already. Then they go out and train their abs, and all they do is more ab exercises that create even more stiffness, like planks and power presses. And then footballers wonder why they're unathletic, why they're slow, and why they're constantly hurting themselves on the pitch. Because if we're not training our core muscles to move in all 360 degrees of motion in different stances, then you're just asking to become another completed dribble on Neymar's stat sheet. Now you will see this with the full routine example at the end, but what I do with my athletes is I make sure in every single session that we are training flexion, extension, lateral flexion, and rotation. So when I'm designing a program for my athletes, the very first thing that we need to decide is what type of motion we're going to be working. So in this case, let's choose rotation. Then when picking out the actual stance, we need to start someone with more supported exercises and slowly progress them through to less supported exercises. And here's what I mean. So positions that are more supported are going to be things like supine, which is just you laying flat on the ground on your back. Then we have side lying exercises. Then another example would be half kneeling or split stance, etc. And a quick pro tip, because a lot of people think that supported exercises are bad for footballers because it doesn't teach us to move like we would on the football pitch. But supported ab exercises in particular are great for teaching this mobile and fluid motion, because that support actually teaches us to move with a little bit less tension. The problem then becomes if we are doing this and then we don't do any unsupported ab exercises, so we're just fluid and mobile, we don't have any strength to actually reproduce that on the pitch. But anyway, back to the example. So then we just have to pair these things up. So if we're starting with a supine ab exercise, we can start with a Turkish crunch for 2 to 3 weeks. Then we can go into a Copenhagen side plank with thoracic rotation for 2 to 3 weeks. And lastly, a split stance back loaded weighted thoracic rotation to finish up. Finally, if you want to be that player that is a constant threat for your team and someone who can make the difference in a match even when your team is getting smoked, then this is the type of core training for you.
De ser jogador rápido, veloz, ágil, habilidoso, e sabia que se jogássemos juntos a gente poderia fazer uma grande dupla e dar muito trabalho aos adversários.
This type of core training is just called speed core training. Fancy name, I know. But no, I'm not just gonna sit here and tell you that you need to do crunches as fast as possible. I'm going to go over the most underutilized way that you can train your core for speed on the pitch. And I'll even go over how you can train it for top speed versus acceleration. Now this is going to be throws and fake throws. Quick disclaimer, if you don't have med balls to throw or you don't have a wall to throw against, you can do all of these exercises with a 10 to 5 pound plate and you could just fake the throw, so there's really no excuse. So we have 4 different directions that we can throw this med ball or fake throw it, and each of them trains a different part about speed. We can throw it down, we can throw it up, we can throw it forward, and we can throw it backward. And whichever way we throw it is actually going to be which part of our speed we are training. I'll explain. So here's an easy example. If I'm trying to train my ability to have better acceleration or a quick first step so I can separate myself from an opponent to get open for a pass or to get open to knock in a header, then the directions that I would work on throwing the ball would be forward and down. And the reason why this trains acceleration is because when I'm throwing that ball down, I am actively putting as much force as I can into the ground fast. And when we are accelerating, we need to have the highest amounts of force into the ground. And these longer ground contacts and higher amounts of force is what allows for us to pick up speed quickly to then get into our full speed sprint. And bonus points if you do a med ball slam where you are in a acceleration joint specific position, like this rear foot elevated split stance med ball slam. Now, why would we throw it forward? This is going to train my body's ability to project forward and get a strong first step and forward lean. So we can take an exercise like a half kneeling med ball forward throw into a bound and not only improve our running mechanics, but improve the speed and power that we can do those running mechanics. So what if we decide to throw the ball up? The obvious one is yes, that is going to work on our actual vertical, but it is also going to work on our top speed, and here's why. Because you are teaching your body to produce vertical force, it's also teaching us to unweight ourselves, and by being able to unweight ourselves, that's going to improve how fast we can get ground contacts, and as we know, when we're trying to run as fast as we possibly can, we want to spend as little time on the ground as as possible during that top speed phase. And again, bonus points if you are hitting top speed specific joint angles like this exercise. This high seated vertical med ball throw is a great exercise because, as you can see in the hips and the knees, it hits very similar positions to what you would see during top speed sprinting. And throwing it backwards works deceleration, but this video is about speed, so we're not going to get into that right now. So finally, here's a quick and easy routine for you all to do that takes every single thing that we talked about in this video into account so that you can get better today. We want to start with our fastest movement, so obviously we are going to pick a throw. So what we're going to do is get into a split stance and do a fake rotation cross body throw. We will do 3 sets of 5, and this will check the box of rotation and speed. Then go into a heavy Turkish getup, and what you're going to do is you're going to do sets of 1 per side, and you're just going to go heavier every single set until you can't go any heavier. This will be our stiffness and strength exercise, and in addition to that, it trains every single possible motion of the core. For your third exercise, we'll do a cross leg lateral flexion exercise, and we'll go from 10 reps to 8 reps to 6 reps, increasing weight every single set. Then we'll pair a decline crunch and a thoracic extension overhead crunch to make sure that we pair together the flexion and extension aspects of core training. And we'll do this for some higher rep capacity work since we're later on in the core session, so we'll do 10 to 15 reps of each of them. And if you don't have a decline bench, just do some type of reverse crunch or a hanging leg raise. Knock this out for anywhere between 2 to 3 sets of each of them, except for the Turkish getup. Make sure to do as many sets as you need to go heavy. Sometimes when I do that one, I end up getting like 5 or 6 sets, depending on how fresh I am that day. And let me answer some quick questions that I know I'm gonna get because I've been doing this long enough. No, this is not the only ab exercises that you need to be doing throughout the week. And no, you cannot just repeat this routine forever and expect to make optimal and maximal amounts of progress. But if you begin training like this and you understand how to progress the exercises and create a similar complete routine like this, then you are well on your way to having a core that can stand up to the most elite footballers on the planet. Guys, thank you again for watching. I really hope that this type of video was helpful for you. Let me know what you want to see in the comments next time, and otherwise I will see you all next week.